Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this town hall meeting for InhaleRx Limited. I'm delighted to be welcoming you all here to this virtual meeting, and on behalf of the board, we thank you for taking the time to attend. My name is Sean Williams, and I am the chairman of InhaleRx. Joining me today is my fellow director, Mr. Tony Fitzgerald, together with our CEO, Mr. Daryl Davies, our medical advisor, Dr. Sud Agarwal, and our company secretary, Mr. James Barry. Also joining us for the first time is Mr. Matt Wright of NWR Communications, which has been recently appointed as the company's communication advisors. NWR is a well-established Australian investor relation and communication specialist, and Matt is highly experienced in advising listed biotechnology and drug development companies. NWR's initial focus will be on enhancing InhaleRx's presentation to the market, investor relations, media engagement, and social media activation. The format for today is for Daryl to provide an update on the progress of our IRX 616A and IRX 211 clinical development programs for treating panic disorder and breakthrough cancer pain, respectively. After that, Dr. Sud will then provide us with a more medically based technical update on the IRX 211 program, which, as you're all aware, is starting to get to the very exciting stage of first patient in. We'll then open the meeting up for questions. Hopefully, we'll be able to get through today's proceedings in about half an hour. I'll hand over to you now, Daryl. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sean. And good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from today. And thank you for tuning in for this town hall meeting. I'm Daryl Davies, and I'm pleased to walk you through a brief update on our pipeline progress, funding position, and the exciting clinical milestones ahead. So for those of you who are less familiar with the company, InhaleRx is a clinical stage biotech innovator developing precision-dosed inhaled therapeutics in pain and mental health. We're advancing two lead drug device candidates, IRX 211 and IRX 616A. With a $38.5 million facility secured, our clinical development plans are fully funded to progress rapidly. Our IP portfolio includes a PCT, an approved innovation patent for inhaled cannabinoids, and a provisional patents that build our long-term defensibility. Importantly here, we're targeting high-value unmet needs in breakthrough cancer pain and panic disorder markets, with large global demand and limited inhaled rapid onset treatment solutions. Next slide, please, James. Thank you. Okay, so IRX 211 is being developed to treat breakthrough cancer pain, and it's a prescription-only inhaled therapeutic. We completed our phase 1 trial. There were no serious adverse events, which is a strong early signal of safety. In terms of market growth, the global cancer pain market is projected to hit $11.2 billion USD by 2030, which presents a very strong commercial opportunity. The company is targeting the FDA, being the largest regulatory body in the world. And with an FDA approval, we unlock government reimbursements and we create a pathway to approvals with the EMA in Europe and the TGA in Australia. So manufacturing has commenced for the phase 2 in preparation for the clinical trial. And as you can see from this slide, we have pretty much worked through anything that's highlighted in green across the last quarter, and we've stayed on track, on schedule. Everything is tracking really well, and essentially we're doing what we communicated at our last town hall, and we're delivering on that promise. So, we're all very excited by where 211 is at the moment, and the batch manufacturing should see us in a position where we're able to celebrate first patient in within Q3 of this year. Okay, so to talk about our other candidate here, IRX 616A, again, a prescription-only medication, but this one is targeting panic disorder. The HREX submission through the clinical trial site for the phase 1 actually occurred today, and we're targeting a quick transition to the phase 2 to evaluate the tolerability and efficacy in the patient population, following database lock with the phase 1. So we're gearing up and preparing for that phase 1, and we're now in the hands of the HREC committee for hearing any queries that they may have, and working through those queries to ensure that we have approval to proceed. So just in terms of the addressable market here, the anxiety and depression treatment market is valued at over $22 billion USD. And notably, there is no FDA-approved inhaled therapy specifically for panic disorder, giving 616A a first-mover advantage. Again, we're targeting the FDA for the same reasons I mentioned with IRX 211, and we're looking to access those levers, those government reimbursements, and also then bridge to the TGA and EMA. Okay, so in terms of milestones and where we are, again, this one is tracking as per our initial plans, and across the quarter, there has been some refinement to the protocol and some further development there. And obviously, we have been preparing everything, packaging it up, and getting all of the relevant information over to CMAX as the clinical trial site, who have confirmed today that that has now been submitted to HREC, as I mentioned earlier. So maybe just to touch on some of the other things here. So you may notice that I've put to be confirmed across batch manufacturing, first patient screened at first patient dose. So the reason for that is we really need to see how quickly we can get HREC approval and manage some of the queries that do come out of the committee. And once we have a HREC approval, that's when we can initiate the batch manufacturing. There's obviously no logic in starting the manufacturing or initiating that process until we have a HREC approval. So that's why they've moved to be confirmed. Next slide, please. So this slide just sort of encompasses our corporate structure, really. Across the quarter, we've attracted an increase in volume and engagement from shareholders, which is fantastic. I think this is a testament to the stage that we're at. Many investors are starting to recognize that the company's positioning relative to our clinical development plans, and to layer over that, the fact that we're fully funded to execute on those plans, which is, we acknowledge is a very rare and advantageous position to be in. We've seen some incremental increase to the share price as well over the quarter, which again is fantastic and really promising to see. So with access to that 38.5 million in funding, both trials and programs are fully funded. Despite that, we are pursuing forward funding arrangements with our R&D tax advisors, and we are using whatever incentives we can to optimize capital deployment. Our cash burn is very tightly controlled and continues to be so. We have a very lean team, just including myself, Dr. Sudha Agarwal, who will speak shortly, and Dr. Rob Cheney as our Chief Scientific Officer. we have already gone to the FDA in a pre-IND capacity across both programs, and we have been able to ascertain the primary endpoints, which gives us a sort of clear regulatory strategy. And as Sean mentioned before, we're delighted to have brought on NWR Communications to lead our media and investment outreach, at least over the next 6 months. I think the timing is very important for us, and bringing on the right people. We are very confident that we've selected the right partner there with NWR. We've already initiated those plans to build on the IR, PR side and some of the media exposure as we tip into the execution phase across both of the clinical programs. So beyond our current pipeline, we're actively scoping new complementary assets to broaden our platform potential, and they continue to be considered and evaluated by the board. So just to wrap this one up then, I think we're in a very strong execution phase at the moment across our clinical plans, and we have a very disciplined and committed management team and board of directors. What lies ahead of us for the phase 2 is particularly exciting. We're very keen to see how IRX 211 is tolerated in the patient population, and we're looking to initiate our first in-human trial for 616A. Thank you for your time today, and thank you for all of our shareholders for your loyalty and support. We'll happily take any questions following Dr. Sug Agarwal's presentation. Over to you, Sue.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to the InhaleRx team and the investors. First of all, it's always a pleasure to be able to communicate with the shareholders and update them, especially when we've got such, I guess, exciting and groundbreaking things to speak about. So clearly, IRX has been advancing and is now at the business end of a clinical trial, and where things start getting quite exciting. Most of you will already be aware that the IRX 211 trial is the inhaled THC trial for the treatment of breakthrough cancer pain. And this has been one that's the most advanced clinical asset that InhaleRx has been working on. So after Darryl's already given such a thorough introduction, I might jump straight into the clinical elements to try and bring everybody up to speed. So for those who are new to the asset and haven't got the full background, I might quickly just do a slightly deeper dive on these 5 salient points about the indication and the drug device combination. So just to bring everyone up to the same page, IRX 211 is an inhaled THC only delivery device, which is a unique device, drug device combination that's delivered via a handheld inhaler, very similar to an aspirin inhaler. It delivers a metered dose of a specific dose of THC, and that THC is inhaled into the respiratory tract in the same way as Ventolin would be as an asthma agent. Okay, it's specifically targeting a subgroup of patients that are very poorly treated by conventional medicine today. These are opioid-tolerant cancer patients who have what's called breakthrough cancer pain. And I'll talk a little bit further about that shortly. But there is not one FDA-registered product that is in commercial production for this group of patients today. Even though approximately 10 years ago, this was a $1.5 billion market, which was flourishing in the United States and the other parts of the world. Yeah. It's specifically designed, and I guess this is the key thing, that it's a rapid onset pain reliever at the time when you get your breakthrough cancer pain. So one of the critical elements to understand that it's patient demanded, what physicians refer to as PRN, and it's done in a just-in-time model. Pain commences, treatment is available just in time, to treat as and when the pain episodes arrive, which arrive spontaneously, episodically, and without any prodrome. And one of the other key elements is that the user, depending on their background pain and their opioid tolerance, will need a different dose between person to person. So the idea of dose personalization, this is under the whole area of precision medicine, is another key element of this, that you can titrate a specific dose that is relevant to you as an individual and your background pain. Okay, so this drug has moved it's quite a novel drug. It's quite innovative. There's many features of this that haven't really been seen in the Australian analgesic market yet. So this will be quite groundbreaking. It's now entering multi-site, multi-jurisdictional clinical evaluation, where there's been a number of high-profile clinical sites and principal investigators, professorial and specialist physicians who've put their hand up to participate as lead sites for this trial. Next slide, please. So one of the key elements about this trial, and the protocol will be available in public formats in shared domains such as clinical trial registries. In fact, I believe it's already there now. It's a multi-stage intra-subject controlled study. So for those who are familiar with clinical trials, the general modus operandi of a clinical trial is you get a group of patients who are as homogeneous as possible. You have an active drug and you have a placebo drug, and you subdivide your population on a randomized basis and say half the population receive the active drug, half the population receive the placebo drug, and you measure the response to that patient group in the active group and in the placebo group in a completely blinded randomized fashion, where the patient and the physician and the person who's doing the endpoint assessment is unaware of what's happening. You look at the outcomes and then you look for any difference between the two groups. And you assume that because the groups were identical at the start, that whatever difference has occurred because of the effect of the drug. Now, in reality, that's not always the case. No patient populations are identical. There's always systematic bias that creeps into clinical trials. The two different groups may have different key characteristics: gender, age, background opioid, concomitant medication differences that create systematic bias between the active and the placebo group. And that's just life. And it's that reason why you need to show the active group is substantially better than the placebo group at something what's called the 95th confidence interval. That's the standard FDA and global cutoff for most regulatory bodies. Now, one way of enhancing the quality of your study is that if each individual is his own or her own control, then there is no higher, more regulated control. Person A comes in, they get both the active washes out, and then they get the placebo later on. That's commonly called a crossover study, where it's the same person who's identically matched. Obviously, person one, he's the same gender 3 days ago as he is in 3 days' time. He's the same weight, he's the same concomitant meds, etc., as he was 3 days' time. So there is no higher level of comparator than the same self. So this study has been designed with that in mind, and that allows us to tighten up a lot of the statistical calculations, and also the magnitude of change required to be deemed a success in the views of the FDA and other regulatory bodies is much tighter. So from a gambling or from a frequency gambling prospect, this would be a much higher chance of approval, in that you've got much tighter control. Okay. So with that background, let me walk you through the structure of the clinical trial. So these patients are people who are cancer patients who've got, I'll just go back one slide, please, if that's possible. Yeah, these patients are cancer patients who've got a variety of different cancers: lung cancer, breast cancer, brain cancer, bone cancer, all walks of life. They're all going to be on a minimum of 60 milligrams of daily oral opioid dose. So they're all on big painkillers. In Australia, that will most likely be OxyContin, MS-Contin, or oxycodone tablets, which are the most commonly used oral opioids for cancer pain in Australia. Those patients will then be observed with no medication given, just what they are taking normally and how frequently they are getting background breakthrough cancer pain episodes, and how much analgesia they need to treat it. From that observation period, they then move into what we call Part A, where they're given an active device and they self-titrate how many shots of the active device they need, how many puffs they need to achieve adequate analgesia for one of their own breakthrough pains. So they receive a breakthrough pain episode. They then take, 3 to 5 to 7 actuations or inhalations of the pump. They achieve adequate analgesia. We know they're a qualifier. So only patients who are actually receiving the drug and are confirmed to be benefiting from the analgesic response of the drug qualify to go into Part B. At Part B, they are randomized and they will receive 7 active inhalers and 3 placebo inhalers in a sequence that they are unaware of. They're unaware, the investigator is unaware. In fact, everybody is blinded, including the CRO. And then those patients, as and when they get any breakthrough episodes over the next few weeks, will be randomly taking one of those inhalers in a pre-assigned sequence and noting what their response was, their pain score at the beginning and the pain score at the end. And the critical pivotal endpoint for this study is what's called the SPID-30, which is the summation of pain intensity difference, which in English basically means how much did the pain score change from at the time when they first got the pain episode to 30 minutes after? And is that movement better than the placebo inhalers? So we've got 7 active inhalers and we've got 3 placebo inhalers. Now, if the drug is working as it says so on the box and as the InhaleRx team believe it should be, and as the millions of patients who take inhaled cannabinoids today in the United States believe it works, then you would expect the active 7 inhalers to create a much bigger deflection in pain score than the 3 placebo inhalers. So that's to be discovered. But the beauty of this study is that it's the same subject. It's the same human being. He's comparing his 7 actives to his 3 placebo responses. Okay, so that's one of the critical frameworks of this trial structure. And if the difference, and looking at other drugs that have been approved, it's generally a 1-point difference that the FDA has considered significant in the past for some of the other drugs approved for the same condition. So if most people's breakthrough pain episode starts at a pain score of, say, 6 or 7 out of 10, let's just say 7 out of 10 for this example, and then on treatment of a number of puffs that they've already designed or that they've already tested and it worked for them on a previous episode, let's say that's 5 puffs, on taking the 5 puffs, if that went from a pain score of 7 to a pain score of 4 at the 30-minute mark, so it's a 3-point improvement. Whereas when they took the placebo, it went from a pain score of 7 to a pain score of 6, so only a 1-point improvement. Then the net difference, so the mean deviation from baseline above what the placebo response is to. So that would be considered an overwhelming success as compared to some of the other breakthrough cancer pain drugs. Okay, next slide, please. So this is where the rubber really hits the road. So every patient is unique. There's no 2 cancer patients that have got the same format of pain, because cancer pain is multifactorial by its nature. There's the direct invasion of the tumor. There's what's called paraneoplastic syndromes that occur with the tumor. There's a whole variety of inflammatory responses. There's chemotherapy related, radiotherapy related. There's metastases related. So cancer pain is by its very nature extremely variable. And for those who are aware, pain often has a multitude of different layers: acute pain, chronic pain, nociceptive pain, neuropathic pain. It's a primordial soup of different levels of pain. So each patient is so varied that the ultimate truth is the intra-person comparison, where every patient is compared only to themselves. The other thing layered on top of this is that each patient will come in with a whole different analgesic recipe. So conventional pain therapy in Western countries is what's known as the analgesic ladder, meaning that you start with lower potency painkillers and you add higher and higher potency painkillers as you go by. Typically, by the time patients are quite advanced, where they're getting breakthrough cancer pain, they may be on 5 or more different analgesics and different doses of those. So every patient is on a cocktail of different drugs. So it's impossible to compare 2 people because their starting baselines are so different. This trial has already been designed to accommodate for that. So that will not be a problem here. All those confounding factors that create systematic bias they've been eliminated. Okay. So the structure, as we discussed, is observation period, confirming that these patients actually get breakthrough cancer pain, then trial with the drug, confirming these patients are responsive to the drug and titrating the dose that is effective in their hands for their cancer, for their pain situation, and then moving them to that part B, where they are themselves their own comparator, receiving 7 active and 3 placebo, and demonstrating that the active is indeed more effective at treating their own pain responses at the 30-minute mark than the 3 placebo inhalers. Okay, next slide, please. So exactly what we've discussed, one of the key elements is the dose refinement, recognizing that every patient has a whole different cancer pain background and has a whole different pain response and has a whole different analgesic response based on all the other medications they're taking, and then confirming that they are indeed a responder. So, some people would call this an enrichment study, where you're already removing people who are non-responders, and you've effectively enriched the quality of the study by only having people that are likely to show meaningful response. And also, you're also eliminating people who've got adverse events. Let's say some people get intoxicated, sore throat, low blood pressure, all of the things that could happen with this drug, all of that's being eliminated. So you're only taking people who are responders and who are demonstrating safety before enrolling them into the Part B. Okay, next slide, please. And Part B is the real trial. This is where the efficacy is truly measured to see if you are getting an improvement. And this will be the make or break of this trial. So we've got 7 active and 3 placebo inhalers given in a random sequence. And I think there's 18 different sequences. The patients don't know what they've got. The clinician doesn't know what they've got. They're all given these 10 inhalers. And every time they get an episode, a breakthrough episode, they keep a diary of the pain score at time equals 0 and at time equals 30 minutes. And it's that net difference between the pain score, which is evaluated between 0 to 10. And that determines whether the drug works and is better than the placebo. Okay, next slide. So as we discussed, probably the beauty of this trial design is we've got such a heterogeneous group of patients with different cancers and different pain backgrounds that having this intra-patient comparator design controls for all of that, and it removes all the other issues. So the signal detection, so the signal to noise ratio for this particular study is extremely solid. So next slide. So just giving an update on where we are operationally, there's already been quite a large amount of interest from oncology and palliative care units. There's a Victorian unit that's already been signed up. There is some substantial interest from some tertiary hospitals in New South Wales with fairly established pain research services. Similarly in Western Australia, which is not mentioned here, and a fairly advanced discussion with the Queensland unit as well. In addition to that, should the trial need to go globally, we've already got engagement with investigators in Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand, and there's some early stage conversation with a Philippines investigator as well. So the opportunity to scale the trial if more patient numbers are needed, or if the view of the InhaleRx team is to scale and go straight forwards into a pivotal phase 3, all of those options would be on the table because of the conversations already had with the international investigators. The study designers had ample feedback from numerous pain professors from around the country, and it follows a very similar structure to trial designs that have been used to approve other breakthrough cancer pain drugs. So the study design is considered very solid, in my opinion. And the sites that have been selected, there are some very, I would say, high-profile oncology sites amongst them, including one major one in New South Wales that you would describe as a hotbed of clinical research in cancer pain. Next slide, please. For those who may have missed the previous talk, we did talk briefly, or I did talk briefly about breakthrough cancer pain and why it's so unique. So historically, probably since the 90s or late 90s, breakthrough cancer pain has been more and more recognized as a major part of the cancer pain syndrome that is very poorly treated. And part of the reason it's poorly treated is because it's episodic and it's very sudden. And so the fact that it's unpredictable when it happens, it's always been assumed that it's untreatable. Cancer pain sufferers will just have to just cope with it or take whatever their conventional oral opioids are. The only issue with the conventional oral opioids, OxyContin, oxycodone, MS-Contin, morphine mixture, Severodol, the problem with all of those is they've got substantial onset times, so often north of an hour. And so it's not going to work for a pain episode that is happening here and now and then. You need something that works within seconds, not within hours. So then there was this whole generation of transmucosal fentanyls that came in. Some of the high-profile ones included Subsys, Abstral. There was probably about 15 on the market at one point, and these were generally sublingual or subbuccal fentanyl lollipops, chewing gums, a whole variety of different formats that were generally put in the gums in the mouth, and they worked very quickly, typically within 10 to 15 minutes, and provided adequate pain relief to patients. There was a general anti-fentanyl feeling, predominantly from the United States, with it considered one of the sort of major scourges of modern living. And fentanyl was sort of more and more withdrawn because there was too much of this fentanyl drug, even though it was considered a very effective drug from analgesia. It was getting into the illicit population. And so fentanyl has been globally withdrawn. And I think the WHO, the United States, United Nations have generally fought a war against fentanyl-based drugs. And even now, it's pretty hard for anesthetists, pain specialists to prescribe fentanyl-based drugs outside of the operating room. So the US FDA had the last fast onset fentanyl drug. If the manufacturer withdrew from the commercial market in October 24. So currently today in the United States, the fast-acting fentanyls are not available outside of the operating room. The rest of the world, there's still a few opportunities to get Abstral in some parts of Southeast Asia, but generally developed countries where fentanyl has a high risk of leaching into the illicit supply market, England, Australia, New Zealand, they have pretty much withdrawn fentanyl from this indication. So they're relying entirely on these sort of oral, more morphine-style based drugs, which have that lower risk of addiction and illicit use. Obviously, intravenous opioids are just impractical for patients at home, so that's not a good option. And oral opioids are far too slow to treat these breakthrough pain episodes, which start within seconds and with minimal prodrome. So there's general, amongst the anesthesia population, is general dissatisfaction with the current drugs available. And, there was a very positive response from the FDA when this was discussed with them. But in general, the clinical population is waiting for a new fast onset analgesic drug to treat this highly, highly unmet need today. Okay, next slide, please. So in summary, closing remarks, there is a big gap in the breakthrough cancer treatment market. There is no drug that I would describe as being satisfactory to satisfy this population of patients who are suffering. The drug structure, the pharmacokinetics, the clinical use, the ability to use it safely in conjunction with opioids aligns with modern cancer pain management priorities. The concept of this analgesic ladder, where you add this in on top of existing opioids without any risk of interaction, is a very positive thing. And the fact that it's patient-controlled, titrated, and specifically able to use at the point of care when the patient needs, on demand, so it's just in time, that's a very powerful value proposition for any analgesic drug. And the fact we've now got experienced investigators across multiple regions putting their hands up to participate in the clinical trial is a show of strength and support for what is quite a novel, slightly out of the box clinical concept. I think we've reached the point now where IRX 211 is looking like it's getting substantial clinician support. That's everything. Thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions.
Excuse me. Thanks, Sud. Great presentation again. Thank you, and thank you, Daryl. I'd like to open the meeting up now for questions, if there are any. Perhaps James, if there are any. I think there were some prior to the meeting. If you could read those, please.
Thanks, Sean. Good afternoon, everyone. Some of these we have covered during the presentation, but I will repeat them, Sean, just in case there's anything that you wanted to add to that.
Thanks, James.
First question, will the company be engaging in some targeted marketing as it moves into the clinical trial phase? I'm not sure if you wanted to elaborate on any more that you said about NWR earlier, but...
Well, there's certainly, as a board, we recognise that entering this exciting phase, we want to obviously step up the investment in our marketing and investor relations. So, Matt Wright's engagement with NWR Communications is very much front and centre in that. Obviously, we as a board and management team will support that, and part of that is obviously what we're doing here today. So we look forward to sharing more of our developments in more and exciting ways with the market, but also the broader community.
Thanks, Sean. Next question is the company funded well enough to have a full-time employee to lead the day-to-day operations as well as the trial program?
Well, I think we've sort of covered this previously in a number of meetings. We, as a board, are very much comfortable and supportive of the current approach, which really has resources applied as and when we need to the program. We outsource various aspects of the expertise that's required, whether that's in the manufacturing process or formulation, or in fact in the clinical program. So we're very comfortable that we've got the right resource base in place, given the requirements on the company and the objectives we've set. Obviously, bringing NWR in as part of the market-facing engagement is also part of that. So, no, look, we keep a close eye on that as a board. It's a regular point of discussion, but at this point in time, we don't see any need for a full-time employee, and we're still very keen to keep the cash burn of the business as low as we possibly can, obviously without having impact on progress.
Sean, and just for the benefit of shareholders who are online, you can type in your any questions that you may have in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Just a slight pivot here. Can you please provide some approximate timelines for how the trials will progress? So I think this is from a holistic overall time frame.
Yeah, I think Daryl's tried to do that. Daryl, did you want to make any further comment on that?
Sure. No. Okay. Sure. Can do. So with IRX 211, I see that there's a question there from CK in the chat, and that's specifically about first patient screened and first patient dosed. So we had put in there by way of timelines that we anticipate both of those activities happening before the end of Q3. There is that still remains the case, essentially. We've got to bring in, there is pre-screening involved, and this all sort of bleed into the next question around sort of how long is it going to take for us to run these trials as well, because we did receive that from another shareholder in advance of this meeting. So with IRX 211, we have a lead site, and the currently sort of testing recruitment and doing some activities to really sort of refine how many patients they anticipate being able to attract as a lead site. As Sid mentioned in his presentation, there are 3 other sites, all of which we have gone through site evaluation process with, where they predict and anticipate, based on the eligibility and exclusion criteria, how well they are going to be able to attract people to our study. So, I appreciate I'm not landing on a specific date here, but what I will say is the engagements that we've had with the sites, with hospitals and the lead site, have been very positive. The original timeline for running IRX 211 from first patient screen to database lock was somewhere in the region of 18 months. We're hoping to accelerate that a little bit further as we look to attract additional sites and get them activated. So there are a few levers there. There's a few variables. It will depend on how many sites we activate and how quickly we get to run that particular trial. For 616A, well, that's been done at one site in Adelaide called CMAX. Again, we feel confident we've selected the right partner there, and that one should be a lot faster. So, I mean, I don't know if you want to talk at all about anything that I've just mentioned in terms of timelines across both programs, or whether that's sufficiently covered.
I think you've very adequately covered that. I think that's pretty well covered.
Daryl, just a further question from the same shareholder. Is there a planned interim readout, and at what point would that occur?
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't necessarily look to do an interim readout. Yeah, that hasn't been sort of decided or discussed at this current time. If we do have the window to be able to celebrate that we are accelerating our recruitment, then that will obviously be something that we'll have to look at the time. But as for an interim readout, it hasn't been discussed.
Thanks, Daryl. Might actually just take one from one of our attendees. First one, now that we're already in Q3, could we have a more concrete timeline for first patient screened and dosed for IRX 211?
Yeah, so I think that's what I sort of went through before, really. So, that one, we've got Q3 across both of those, and it's tight for first patient first dose in Q3. There is a possibility that might roll over to Q4. But as for first patient in and screened, we are well on track to have that done within Q3. I don't want to get to the granularity of which month or which week things are going to happen. I don't think there's any benefit in doing that. We talk about quarters, and we try and give some expectation management to shareholders, but as everyone can appreciate, there's many variables in this game and things can change. So there's no merit in setting ourselves up talking about specific months.
Thanks for that. Next one, what is the patient size for phase 2 of IRX 211? And again, just a follow-up question there, how long will it take to complete?
Yeah, so that one I tried to sort of run through before, and I thought I'd cover that as well. I mean, the 18 months is what we were looking at initially. We have those 3 additional sites from the lead site, which we can activate, and the recruitment rates that they have quoted are very promising. So, we think we're in a good position to condense that 18-month anticipated timeline. But obviously, we'll have drop-off between the numbers that are screened and those that qualify and actually go on to receiving any dosing. Sid, any comments on that, or anything further you think's advantageous for the group?
Maybe just recapping on a couple of those items. The question about the interim analysis. So one of the reasons we try and steer clear, I mean, it sounds exciting. Like, why don't we do an interim analysis at 30 patients, 60 patients, 90 patients? There's a few challenges with doing an interim analysis. Well, one of them is it unblinds the data. So up until that point, investigators, other patients, the sponsor team are all fully blinded to the outcomes of the data. The data is of very high quality. The minute you do an interim analysis, then everyone suddenly becomes aware, and that changes the motivations of people. So, let's say the drug is overwhelmingly showing benefit, then people will behave differently because then, this drug's already in the pocket, it's already going to do it. Investigators may be less motivated to recruit more patients, etc. Patients may be less motivated to take part in the trial because they say, well, it's already in the pocket. And let's say it wasn't. It was getting close to the significance line, but not quite there. It might have the opposite effect. It could reduce patient participation because they think it may not work. It may reduce investigators' likelihood of recruiting patients for the trial. So generally, the feeling is it's best not to do an interim analysis and just go straight to the end, get all your data in one failed swoop, and then basically do the analysis then. In addition to that as well, having multiple lookups along the way just does increase the probability that you're going to get what's called a false positive or a false negative outcome. If you're having multiple lookups, there's more chance that by purely luck or by purely chance alone that you've got an incorrect positive outcome. So, as a rule, we would try and avoid unblinding any data, locking the database early, and then doing the interim analysis. The second part about the screening, pre-screening, etc. I think this is very well covered by Daryl. Whilst the trial has, and I think it's already been announced in the public domain that the trial is already ethics approved, and so that's that, and sites have already been nominated and already been selected, like Daryl mentioned. So whilst I think there was a question about when does screening begin. So as Daryl mentioned before, there's the social media aspect of the trial and pre-screening of patients that has effectively already begun. The formal enrollment of patients will wait until the sites undergo what's called a site initiation visit. But the pre-screening, where doctors who've got existing databases of patients are already filtering through that database to look for identical patient matches for the trial.
Thanks.
That's all I was going to.
Yeah, no, good context and explanation there. Thank you for layering over with that. James,
thanks, Daryl. Thanks, Sud. Yeah, we've got another couple. One that has come through. We've mentioned, IRX has mentioned in the past about potentially bringing in another clinical asset. And again, this was touched on in the slides, but Sean, you may want to add to this. Is this still the case? And if so, has there been any progress?
Well, yeah, we are, as Daryl mentioned in the presentation, we're actively looking at new assets, particularly early stage assets, to balance out the portfolio. IRX 211 is obviously at that exciting phase 2 stage that Daryl and Sud have described very effectively. 616A is a little bit earlier. It's still at we're going into phase 1, and then there's a potential to bring in some additional assets. Probably a bit earlier in the process, just to balance things out. We don't want those new assets to distract from our objectives with IRX 211 and 616A, nor do we want to put any massive financial strain on the company in completing those programs. So we're very mindful, and also we want to make sure that whatever we choose has got a quality asset with really good prospects. So it's an important process to go through in a disciplined way, which we're applying that both at the management and board level, and we'll keep the market informed as we progress. If we find an asset we like, and we find a way to fund it, and we think we can meet all those other objectives and balance them out, then we'll make an announcement and engage the market.
Thanks, Sean. Let's got another one from a corporate perspective, and the question's in relation to the quarterly Appendix 4C cash flow report, and specifically there's one item in there relating to $20,000 in salaries, noting that shareholders approved for directors to be paid in equity in lieu of cash. Did you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as we covered in the activities report, we received two large research and development tax incentive payments from the ATO late in the June quarter, and up to that stage, we were having to be very frugal and careful with our funding at that time. A number of members of the board and management agreed to defer the payment of some of their fees. And in this case, there were, if you recall, there were a mix of cash and equity paid for 2024 fees to James and myself and Andrew Saish, who was the director at that time. And in this particular case, some of that money that was carried over from 2024 that was due to be paid in cash was paid to James in this case in late June, and there'll be further payments that you'll see go through in July, which is for myself, the CFO. Greg Hammond is our CFO, and I think some of your company secretarial fees have been deferred as well, James. So it was all just part of the timing, I guess, of having some funds available and meeting those outstanding commitments. We were able to do that because as I said, the board members and the executives involved were happy to support the company by deferring their requirement for payment. And just to finish that, yes, going forward, 2025, all board directors are taking their remuneration in performance rights as was approved at the AGM in May.
Thanks, Sean. And just for people online, copy of the presentation was lodged with the ASX just before the webinar started. So you'll be able to download that there, and I believe we'll also be intending to have a truncated recording that we'll add to our library on the website as well for future viewing as well. Got one more question here, and I might just read or paraphrase this. IRX 211 has been really well covered both today and past webinars. Now that 616A is about to enter the frame in terms of its phase one, can we expect a more thorough analysis, as we've seen today with 211, to educate current future shareholders of why the company feels this is something special?
I think the answer to that would be yes, James, as we move into a more exciting phase of 616A. Shareholders and the market would expect that we'd be explaining that opportunity in a more fuller way. As you've seen today, Darryl's provided a very thorough update of our progress from a corporate level, and then we always have the benefit of having Dr. Sood take us into the detail on the technical medical side of things and how practically we're working through the development and addressing unmet needs. So we would certainly expect to expand our focus in that respect as we go forward.
Thanks, Sean. There aren't any other questions that have come through. So, Sean, I might just hand back to you to wrap up, if you like.
Yeah, thanks, James. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time this afternoon. We really appreciate the interest and support we receive from our shareholders. Thank you also to Darryl for your presentation. Thank you, Dr. Sood, for the presentation today. Again, Highly informative, enlightening, gives us great insights into what we're actually doing, I guess, behind the scenes here in a clinical sense, and really importantly, giving a great insight into the opportunity that's available going forward. So, thank you again. Thanks, James, for convening today. Thank you, Ron and Tony, for your attendance. Look, we're really excited by where we're at as a company at the moment. Hopefully that's been reflected in today's presentation. And we look forward to keeping all our shareholders fully informed as we move forward over these next coming months as the different milestones are ticked off, and importantly as we progress towards that phase 3 ready milestone, which is critical. So we've gone for not quite an hour, but thank you again for your time, and wish you all well for the rest of the day.
Thank you.